I know I did a previous video in which I shared with you a question that God asked, and that was, can I trust you? And this morning, God went on to explain to me why it's important that He can trust us during this time and season. Because God knows the flesh. He knows what you're going to do under certain circumstances and in certain situations. And He wants to make sure that you don't make yourself shamed and make Him ashamed in carrying His name in fulfilling the mission or the calling that's on your life. A lot of times we can have the zeal and we can have the calling, but we have not gotten rid of some things in us that would prevent us from doing what God wants us to do. And don't you think for a second, just because you gave your heart to the Lord and you went to the altar and you got baptized or sprinkled or however your denominational truths are, you're still in the flesh. And God knows what part of your flesh is going to be tempted in the mission and in the calling upon your life. And He does not want you to make a shipwreck of it. And so I said, God, I said, you know what? I said, I'm understanding this more and more. And I said, you wouldn't keep asking me, can you trust me? Or can He trust me? If you didn't think that there was something in me that was questionable. And so I've been going before the Lord since that video and just saying, God, what is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? And then I made some inventory of myself and went back and said, well, God, this was a weakness at one point. I didn't do quite what I should have done on this situation. I went back in years and years and years and years and just made some confessions to myself and to God. And after I finished with that, I said, okay, God, okay, I made those confessions. I said, but Lord, I said, I'm looking at all of that stuff. And I said, God, I don't see it. I said, I don't see it in me. And you know what God said? He said, now, you're not perfect. He said, but you've learned to overcome the flesh. You've learned to resist the devil and the things that he presents to you. You've learned to do without. And He just brought situations to me where I could have made some extreme money, but I couldn't do it because it wasn't in God's will. I could have done some things. It's a lot of stuff that could have happened. I could have married somebody who was extremely a man of means, but I knew it was not God's will. And so when you step out of God's will because the flesh wants it or the flesh thinks it should have it, you're in a dangerous place, and you're in a place where God cannot trust you. And God also explained to me why it was important for me to be celibate. He said, I needed to know that when I put you in situations where you're going to have to work with men, that I don't have to worry about you sleeping with them. And see, some of y'all, some of us as women, we ain't passed that test. And a lot of us are in ministry who have not passed that test. But I want to encourage you, sisters, that until you get to the point where you can control your body and your emotions, God cannot use you, because He will bring in that man that is able to tempt you. And then when he tempts you, he's going on about his business. You cannot be a female in ministry, particularly, and not have your body under submission to God. And men, you can't be in ministry if you're around trying to mess with every woman that possibly you can, because the sexual sins are worse. They are deadly. They are deadly. They are deadly. Because when that happens, God knows that He is not your husband. You're not His bride. Because if you were His bride, you would wait. And you would have not only the power, I don't need power anymore because I have a desire. I have a desire. And sometimes, I wonder, God, am I being too whatever? And I've had some men pay me some of the most precious compliments. And you know what they said to me? They said, "We love you," or "I love you. And you know what? I'll protect you because I know the God in you." And these are men that have tried their best to get me to do some things that I know I shouldn't have done. And when you resist that man has more respect for you than you could ever imagine. If he can just come in and get what he wants, slam bam, thank you or no thank you, ma'am, you're no more to him than just, you know what I'm talking about, a piece of. And so it is important to control your flesh. If you're someone that goes around and just talks all the time, sometimes God wants you to just shut up. That's another part of the flesh. You don't have to say something every time, every opportunity. Keep quiet. And even with me being very vocal, I'm vocal when I know God wants me to be vocal. And when he doesn't, I shut up. I shut up. I don't say a word. I have sat in meetings and not said one thing. And everybody would look over at me and I'm saying, I don't have anything to say. And if I did have anything to say, it's not anything that I want to share. And so control. When you learn to control this flesh, and we say, well, all you got to do is get the Spirit of the Lord, and the Spirit of the Lord will do everything else for you. And no, it will not. You have the Spirit of the Lord as an enablement. It enables you to have the power to resist the devil and the temptations of the flesh. But it does not force you, and it's not some automatic something inside of you that you don't have to push the button. You're going to have to push the button on this and say, God, keep me. And you're going to have beyond every other thing, the desire to be kept. The desire not to lie, the desire not to get involved in sexual encounters, the desire not to hate people, the desire not to gossip against people, the desire not to bruise anyone. If you don't have that desire down in your heart, you might as well have already fallen. And a lot of us are just playing this thing. We're talking about, I'm living for the Lord and I gave my heart to the Lord. When you give your heart to the Lord, he gives his heart to you. And when you look at his heart, you don't want to break his heart. And he doesn't want to break your heart. And I know that, when I was married, I didn't want to break my husband's heart. I didn't. And he didn't want to break my heart. So therefore, we worked together to love each other. And that's what God wants. But it is too much under the cover and under the rug stuff going on among those that are saying that they're in spiritual leadership. If you cannot control your flesh, God said, I can't take you with me. He said, I cannot fulfill the calling on your life. And this is why I had to be celibate. If God is taking me, if he so chooses to continue with the plan that he's saying to take me to Washington, D.C., I have to go to Washington, D.C. with my flesh control. I can't be a lover of money. I can't be involved in sexual relationships. I cannot go there lying. I can't go there stealing. I can't. I've got to go there as one who represents God. Now, that doesn't mean I'm self-righteous. It does not. Because what I have learned is that the greatest gift you can give to yourself is to know that you're still flesh and that you have to keep flesh under control. And the way in which I've kept my flesh under control is by loving God and not wanting to bruise God, not wanting to hurt him, and going back and realizing those times when I did hurt him, when I did bruise him, and not liking it. I don't like when I hurt God. I don't like when I did things that was contrary to his will. I hated myself for that. And until you get to the point where you not only hate the sin, but you hate you for doing stupid stuff. And I look back at some things that I did in my early part of my widowhood. They were stupid, okay? Just downright stupid. But you will never, ever, ever get me to be stupid no more. And so, if God cannot trust you to keep your flesh, to not lie on people, to not take anything from anyone, to be kind, forgiving, merciful, realizing that he forgave you, to seek his will, and to want to do the things that God says for you to do, and to have the time to spend with him so that you might know who he is, and you may know him in the fullness of his righteousness and his holiness. And again, not making yourself righteous. Let me say that again. You ain't righteous. You're not righteous. Jean Howard Hill is, say my whole name, Mary Jean J.L. Howard Hill. She is not perfect, but her heart is perfecting. And I would never, never, never be okay with doing something that I know is contrary to the will of God for my life, first of all, that's contrary to his word, second, but the most important, which is third, but it's the most important, bruising his heart. So think about that. Think about that the next time you are feeling like you just got to do something wrong, or it's okay to do something wrong. God bless you. And may we all come to this point, and not only come to this point, but stay there. And my prayer every day is, God, I got to go deeper. I got to go. Every morning I wake up more in love with him. I mean, it's like, all during the night. It's like, I love you. And it's sort of funny because God said to me, he said, you're going to remarry. And I'm like, oh. I remember was the time that God would say, you're going to remarry. I mean, who, where? But now it's like, and so we made a little concession to this. And I said, I've got to see him in you, and you in him. Yeah, got to be one. Got to be one. Anyway, so don't inbox me no man, because what I said at the end, it is not an invitation for you to start trying to court me. Please, 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 please. Whatever comes will come natural for me and will come natural for whomever. So I hate I even did this at the end of this video. But anyway, I don't want to redo it. So it is what it is. God bless you.